My name is Dawn Watson, and I am from Greenpath Financial Wellness. I have been with Greenpath for nearly 30 years, and prior to my current role with working with our credit union partners, I spent my time talking with individuals on the topic of becoming debt-free. So if you do have any questions, again, feel free to send them over either in the Q&A or the chat feature. We want to make sure that we get those questions answered for you. So Greenpath Financial Wellness is a nonprofit, and we'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. It's so exciting. Our mission is to empower people to lead financially healthy lives, and in doing so, we provide a variety of different services, including one-on-one financial counseling sessions, pre-purchase housing counseling, foreclosure prevention, and rental counseling. We complete credit report reviews and also provide debt management services. Check us out online at greenpath.com to learn more about who we are and the services that we provide. So I'm excited to share with you today what Greenpath is really good at, helping people determine an action plan for what to do next to achieve their financial goals. And specifically, what we're going to talk about today is being able to become debt-free. So coming up with a plan to pay off your debt can really be life-changing. If someone is in debt and worried about it, that debt can really impact their ability to be financially healthy. It's impacting their ability to save, have that flexibility with their finances, and can really cause an incredible amount of stress. So if you can come up with a solid plan to pay off the debt and become more financially healthy, which really means you're in control of your finances, you're ready for an emergency, and you're working towards your financial goals, we know you're going to sleep better, feel less stressed, feel more ready to achieve the other goals that you have in life, not just the ones that are related to money. So we're going to focus today on how to get prepared to tackle your debt. Also, learn about the topics to become debt-free, tips to stay on track with your plan, and how Greenpath can be there to support you. So let's get started with getting prepared. So first, you're going to want to make a list of your income sources. That would include full-time, part-time, child support, any income that you're receiving. You want to make sure that it isn't going to be over time if it's not consistent, or if you have an unreliable source. We really want to make sure that as you're working on this plan, that you can be successful in achieving it. You're also going to want to make sure you're reviewing your checking and savings account balances so you know what you currently have available for the repayment. Maybe you have money left from your stimulus checks, or you have a tax return money that's left. So really understanding what you have available. You're also going to want to pull up your online bank statements or grab them. You want to know, the creditors that you owe, what the balances that are outstanding, your interest rates that you're paying, current monthly minimum payments. And if anything is behind, you're going to really want to have a clear sense of the entire picture. The goal is to determine how much overall debt you have to pay off and compare your options with that understanding. So again, don't forget to include things that you might not normally think about. So if you have family, friends, maybe there's things in collections, maybe there are tax obligations that are owing. So whatever debts that you have, make sure you have a complete and full list of all of those things. You're also going to want to pull a copy of your credit report. And this is going to be helpful in being able to understand, again, if there's things that maybe you just totally forgot even existed, or maybe you haven't looked at your credit report recently. So you can do that, and you can do it online. You can do it for free. There are a couple different ways you can write in if you don't have access for pulling it, or you can, again, just do it online. We recommend going through annualcreditreport.com in order to get that credit report. And we also recommend, if you haven't reviewed them recently, that you consider checking out all of them, Experian, Equifax, as well as TransUnion, because unfortunately, there could be information on those that are different. So you want to make sure that you have the complete and total list of those. Also, this will help you understand if there are any inaccuracies on that credit report that you need to clear up. And that can be part of this process of getting prepared and being able to move forward with us. And I'm going to share out that in the chat feature, the annualcreditreport.com site. So if you want to go ahead, like I said, and take a look at that. So these steps are all going to be important, as they will help you determine which options may or may not work for you as you're going through and looking at everything. So we all use debt in various ways. We use it to buy a house, buy a car, maybe even cover an emergency. Emergencies are constantly coming up. Your car breaks down, you have a home repair. I know that we recently had a home issue here. It was kind of a surprise. I work from home, and I actually have an office in our basement, and I went out in an area of our basement. There was a pipe that was leaking, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? It's a Friday afternoon. I'm thinking this is going to cost a fortune. Luckily, it didn't incur as much as I had thought it could have. But, again, these emergencies happen. We never know when they're going to happen. So the goal of this webinar is being able to help you understand those options, be able to determine that you have an end in sight, a peace of mind that the date of when you're going to be able to become debt-free. So we're going to talk about several different options that you can consider when taking on that challenge of dealing with the debt. We're going to review how you can do it on your own, debt settlement and what that means, bankruptcy, debt consolidation, as well as debt management. We're going to talk about how they work, the pros and cons of each, and just keep in mind that each individual situation is unique, as well as the goals that you're working toward. Having a clear idea of those goals and making sure that you've completed those first steps is going to help you prepare for that debt-free journey and help you determine which option is truly best for you. So you may have already been trying to do this on your own, but without a plan, your success may be really limited. Now, if you do have a balanced budget, a basic strategy to pay off that debt could be as simple as just increasing the monthly payments that you're paying. If you have multiple debts, though, that could be really challenging, trying to juggle, what you're going to do, how you're going to handle it. So consider using the debt snowball method,
which is really a strategy, again, of paying debt off in order of smallest to largest, gaining momentum as you go. It's extremely important to make sure you always, though, redirect those funds to the next account to be able to get that process to continue to work for you. You could also consider the debt avalanche method, which is the strategy of allocating enough money to make the minimum payment each month and then devoting remaining repayment funds to the debt with the highest interest rate. Of course, again, you're going to need some extra money to be able to get that to work, at least at first. And then as you start paying off debts, then it's going to become easier. Finally, you can approach each creditor to determine if they'll offer some type of an internal hardship program for you to help lower those interest rates, stop the fees, to allow you to pay off that debt faster. Make sure, though, if you do that, that you're really communicating with those creditors, that you're documenting who you speak with, what they've agreed to, so that you can make sure that there won't be any issues as you continue with that process. So the pros and cons of all three of these options, or the pros, I should say, of all three of these options, is that there's really no financial cost to you. You're the one that's driving the bus. You're the one that's going to be managing it, handling it, and you would be communicating with those creditors directly. A pro of the snowball and avalanche method is it can really have really limited or no impact on the whole overall credit. You'll be able to keep those accounts open if you choose. That may not be a pro. It may be a con if you're potentially going to be continuously using them. Some potential. So as far as which one is better, it's really depending on your own situation. Again, if you like to see things paid off, you like to see that ability to see progress, then probably doing that snowball where you're really focusing on those small balanced ones so that you can actually see things get removed right away. If you really want to save as much money as you possibly can, the avalanche method, because you're going to be targeting those highest interest rates first, is going to be a better direction. There's, really no one wrong way to do it. It's really just based on your own personal preference and your own mindset. I know some people, it's like, I just want to see it go away. So I want to see that progress. So that if that's your personality, then definitely I would consider the snowball method. So a potential con of it, of these is, again, relying on creditor hardships may be difficult. Maybe they don't all participate in hardships. Maybe they are unwilling to do it for a long term. Maybe they'll say, okay, we'll do it for 3 months until your hardship has resolved itself. Well, maybe your hardship isn't going to resolve itself in 3 months. Also, you really have to have that comfort level to be able to communicate with the creditors, which not everybody does. If you're not the person that's confident to pick up that phone call and talk to those creditors, then you're never going to be able to make that progress and actually achieve that goal of becoming debt-free. Also, another potential con of the creditor hardship program is that you are going to probably see your accounts close. So if that's a concern for you, then you're going to want to make sure that you don't consider that, because that could impact your credit. So if there's something that you're going to do right away, again, you might want to reconsider that. Really, again, these methods do require that extreme amount of self-accountability to be successful. You really have to make sure that you're following that plan carefully, that you're accountable to yourself, because nobody's going to be doing it, for you, with you. So unless you have a family member that's willing to help you stay accountable. So the next option are debt settlements, and this is where you between a creditor pay off a portion of that debt, while the remainder of the debt would be looked at as being forgiven. Now, if you've looked at the interest, if you've looked at the accounts, maybe you've gone online. If you've Googled it, how to pay debt, you've probably seen ads, or maybe at night when you're watching TV, you've seen these ads pop up that make it sound so great. They typically are going to promote those higher monthly payments, and you're going to be able to, they're going to promote and entice you to try to pay that debt off faster, because of the fact that you're not going to be paying back the debt completely in full. It's also important to recognize other names that these go by besides debt settlement. It could be considered as like debt reset, debt relief. They're all really going to be following the same process, where again, you're going to be negotiating the balances down. You could consider doing this on your own. It will be much easier if you try to do it on your own, if you already have the funds to negotiate, and if the accounts are already past due. So if you consider doing it on your own, you're going to want to make sure that you get those offers again in writing, that you have something to back up that agreement that you've made, and also make sure you understand how this is going to be reported to your credit bureau. So there was a chat that just came through. It says, will the debt settlement impact your credit negatively? Absolutely. And that's part of those pros and cons. Again, paying less to the creditors might sound really enticing, but you're going to want to make sure you know what this means. Debt settlement isn't illegal. It's not unethical, but should only be used as other alternatives are explored. This is really typically used if somebody has debt that's all in collections and they're looking for a way to be able to clean that up. Their credit has already been impacted. If you're up to date on your obligations and you're considering debt settlement, the probability that they're going to allow you to do that is pretty unlikely, unless you become delinquent and then charge off, where the creditor would write it off as a bad debt, typically referring it out to a third-party collection action, or potentially sending it to an attorney to take legal action. So again, as far as pros and cons, you can probably say, have a smaller monthly payment for sure, than what you would if you were maintaining minimum payments. Also, you would probably have less being paid out. And I say probably, because keep in mind that unless you have a ton of money right now to be able to take advantage of the settlement option, it's going to take time for you to come up with that money. Typically, you're going to make payments to the settlement company. They're going to hold on to them until they've accumulated enough funds that they can disperse out a one-time payment to one creditor at a time. So, it isn't something that's going to happen overnight, which means that collection calls are going to come. It's going to be pretty stressful. You have to be prepared for that. Understand that not all creditors might participate in it. Again, they're going to fall past due. They're going to charge off, and they could take you to court and try to garnish wages. So it's important to be aware of that. Also, as you're waiting to pay it off and as those accounts are falling further behind, you can imagine, interest is still adding on. Late fees could be charged and added on. That balance is increasing. So the amount that this settlement company is actually going to save you isn't the same amount when you start as it will be when the actual payment is dispersed. You're going to have a higher balance. Also, there are fees associated that the settlement companies are going to charge you. Typically, they charge you a fee up front, and then they charge you a percentage of what they save you. So that's another cost of doing this. When you add up the credit impact, when you add up the additional costs of the fees as they are working to get the settlement paid, and as you add in their costs, you really need to make sure that it makes sense for you. Also, unfortunately, there can be some tax liabilities associated with this option, where the amount that you don't pay could be considered a tax liability. And we do highly recommend that you talk to a tax professional to understand if this is something that is going to impact you. And then, of course, you want to consider that cost of future credit. You're going to have to rebuild your credit, or you're going to start out with much, much higher interest rates offered on the credit that you're eligible to receive. And it can take 7 years for negative information to fall off of your credit report. So that isn't a cost that's going to go away immediately. It could continue to follow you for some time. So that's another cost of taking a settlement and another potential con. So then there's bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is really, it's a legal process through which you can not have to pay back the debt to the creditors. You can potentially seek relief for some or all of your debt. There's some that you might not be able to do. Although you can file bankruptcy without an attorney, it's typically not recommended. There's Chapter 7, which allows you to discharge your debts without a repayment plan. And then there's a Chapter 13, which requires you to repay all or a portion of the debt owed through the courts. And again, talking with an attorney will allow you to determine which option you're eligible for, and definitely recommended. Some pros of being able to look at bankruptcy as an option. If you're at risk of your wages being garnished, losing your vehicle to repossession, losing your home to foreclosure, these are ways that you might be able to delay or prevent that from happening. And again, an attorney can let you know what that might do for you. Collection calls are going to typically stop. So if you're stressed out by the significant number of calls and you can't afford to pay back these debts, it can help with that. And you probably are going to pay less out to the creditors than some of the other options, because again, depending on the chapter you can file, you may not have to pay any of it or maybe pay back a portion. Some of the cons of this, though, are you're going to have money up front to be able to make this work. The attorney fees need to be paid up front. There are going to be court fees that have to be paid. And all of those things are going to have to come out of pocket before you're going to receive any of those protections. Also, the court is going to look at what your income and assets are. They're going to have a potential impact on your ability to discharge the debts as a whole. Also, bankruptcy can stay on that credit report for up to 10 years. So it's even longer than just a collection account on how long it can stay there, which goes back to that conversation we just had, that it's going to impact that cost of future credit. You're going to be paying more as you try to rebuild your credit for your interest rates and things like that. Not all debts can be discharged in a bankruptcy. So again, you want to make sure you understand, is this really going to solve the entire issue or just part of the issue? And then there can really be impact even beyond just that credit impact, like employment. It could have impact, potentially housing. If you wanted to move and they see that you filed, that might have an impact on it because it's impacting your credit. It could impact your ability to get high life insurance. I mean, there's some things that it could cost you the inability to do. And if you choose this option and begin down that path, and then you determine later, oh my, this isn't going to work for me, it can be really, really difficult to take another path later. So this really should be a last resort option after you've considered and looked into all of the other options first. Also, there's debt consolidation. This comes in many different forms. I mean, really the intent is to borrow money to pay off all of your outstanding debts and have one monthly payment. So this could include unsecured, which means that there's no collateral, there's nothing you put up to back the loan, or a cosigner, and it could include secured, typically something of value like your home that you put up for collateral. Consolidation loans may also include title loans, high interest rate loans. It's important to understand really the full terms of this loan that you're signing on before you actually take it. Because again, it can be difficult to choose a different option if you take this route. So pros of this is one consistent monthly payment, each payment making it easier to manage. It may come with a lower interest rate. You got to know those terms, as well as a lower monthly payment. Your credit account may not be closed. So if you're wanting to keep those accounts opened, that could potentially allow you to do that. But that's just a big risk of then being able to get back into trouble again. As far as cons, you're going to potentially receive some credit impact, initially at least. They're going to pull your credit report. You're going to have a brand new loan with no history attached to it. If you take out a secured loan, and then use your house for collateral, an equity loan, if you can't afford to pay, you're risking that house. And that's definitely not something that you want to do. You don't want to take unsecured debt and secure it with your home if you can't guarantee that you can make those payments. Your income and credit would be a factor in the approval process. So if you have already had impact on your credit or your debt to income ratio is too high, you're probably not going to be able to go this route. The savings that you may receive on this might be like, wow, I can get 7% interest or 5% interest. That's great. But the probability is high that it's going to extend out over a longer period of time. So when you really factor in the true savings, it might not be as much as you're thinking. If you could have paid it off in 5 years and you're taking out a 15-year equity loan, you got to think about that extra time and those extra fees that you're going to pay. And then, of course, those high-risk loans, they could be easier to qualify for, like those payday loans or the title loans where you put your car up, your title for your car up for collateral. But they definitely come with much more aggressive collection action and much higher interest rates. So knowing those terms is important. Debt management plans are offered by nonprofit credit counseling agencies, much like Greenpath. We work with the creditors to potentially get lower monthly payments, lower interest rates, waiver of late fees, and ensure each creditor receives a payment each month until that balance is paid in full. Greenpath has been here for 60 years. We have 60 years of history and long-term relationships with the various creditors that allows us to work on your behalf to secure new arrangements. Now, as far as pros and cons, pros are there's no minimum credit score required. If your credit is hurt, that doesn't have any impact on our ability to work and create new arrangements on the debt management program. Balance are going to be paid in full and typically within 5 years, which means you know that insight. You know in 5 years, these debts are going to be paid off based on the new terms. We can handle credit cards, medical collection accounts, whereas other things like debt settlement companies very well may not. They might have minimum balance requirements on credit cards that we don't have. Payments go through the debt management plan to the creditors and allow for those payments to typically follow your pay cycle. So if you're really struggling with managing your debts because you get paid every 2 weeks and they're due throughout the whole month, it can help you with that process. It can look at possibly lowering those monthly payments. So if you're not balancing your budget, make it more affordable. And again, with the reduced interest rates and the waiver of late fees, allow you to become debt-free in a much more timely manner. There also can be some opportunities to exclude an account from a debt management program, which you might not have under a bankruptcy option. So there are a lot of flexibilities that we can offer. Now, there are some cons. The accounts are going to be closed. Again, this may not be a con. It could be a pro. If you want to become debt free because you're planning to retire, or you want to buy a house and you don't want to have all this debt, it could be a definite positive. There can be some initial credit impact. Nothing like bankruptcy, nothing like debt settlement. Really, it's because your credit lines are going to be closed, your credit utilization is going to drop, and that can have some impact. Not all creditors also may agree to set up a plan, but as far as concessions are concerned, but all typically will accept payments and apply them to the debts. So we usually get 80% of our proposed arrangements accepted on the first try. Sometimes we have to go back. Maybe the balances had increased due to usage. Maybe there was some other circumstances, like a new account. So we always will go back and to those creditors, but usually about 80% on that first try. There are some costs associated with the debt management program based on your situation. We would be able to let you know what those are, but typically the individual makes up those costs with concessions, fees reduced. Also, there's a lot of stress reduction with this option. We're here to support you through that process. So this is an important part of it as well. So regardless of the option that you choose to take, there are a few tips to help make sure this process runs smooth and successful. So know your budget. Make sure you know what you have coming in and going out each month. You can use a spending plan worksheet. Greenpath has one. If you haven't received your tax refund, you'll consider that into it. So I will send out here in the chat the location of where you can find that spending plan sheet. Also, you will be able to, we have a worksheet called Aligning Priorities, and this is where you can kind of take a look at, where your money is currently going, and if there's better ways that you can use that money, better ways that you can put that out to your creditors, and it'll help you kind of look at that and really make those decisions. So again, I'm gonna chat these two out, and you can take a look at those. But again, make sure that you understand where you're at with your budget, and make sure that you're on track. Make sure that you're tracking that spending. Make sure you can continue to make all of your payments each month. Download an app. If you like technology, go to your expense to your app store and look up Expense Manager. Maybe use a spreadsheet, maybe like Excel, maybe just use a notebook. That's okay. That's what I do. I know my husband would never look at an app, so I just use a notebook. This should not only, though, include your bills, but everyday expenses, gas, groceries, all the things that you have going out to make sure that you're on track. Look for opportunities to lower your bills and expenses. Mark areas in your budget where you might find some flexibility. Determine what your priorities are and why. Again, use that expense, that Aligning Priorities workbook. Also, consider if you have things that you might be able to sell to bring in more money and pay off some of your obligations. This could be, maybe you have some jewelry or old video games or something that you could use and pay down on the debt. Maybe you have something bigger. Maybe you have a car that you're not driving and you could sell it. We don't typically recommend that you pull money out of your retirement account to pay off debt. But if you want to consider that, we definitely recommend that you talk to a professional to review your options and really understand any tax consequences that might be associated with that. So again, make sure you are knowing your budget, tracking your expenses, looking for opportunities to lower expenses, and reviewing all those assets to see if you can use those in this process. So previously we mentioned our services. Greenpath offers we do financial wellness assessments. We go through and provide housing counseling. We can look at your credit report and review it, and we can definitely talk about debt management services. To talk to Greenpath and get assistance with any of these is always free of charge. You are never going to be charged to look at your housing options, make a call to a mortgage lender with you, review the credit report with you, talk about your budget, talk about your spending, help you get prepared to take on the journey of becoming debt-free. Also, our debt management services will be able to let you know what it would look like before there would be any costs associated with it. So definitely feel that you can give us a call. We want to be here to support you on that journey. Our phone number is 877-337-3399. And again, I will include that in the chat. Or you can go check us out, like I said, on our website at thegreenpath.com. You're also going to find a lot of great resources on the website, as well as those budgeting worksheet and the aligning priorities workbook that I mentioned. So take a look at our website at greenpath.com. So again, thank you for taking the time to talk with me or meet with me to go over this information. We're here to support you any way that we can. And hopefully you learn some things that you feel more confident to be able to work on that debt-free journey. Thank you so much.